Okay, recording is on. Thank you again. So far we have been talking about how to represent things. I mean, if we are going to deal with GIS, in GIS representation is very important because everything that is happening in real world, we are trying to represent. Firstly, we're trying to simplify them. We are trying to categorize them, and then we are trying to represent through this simplification and categorization. We are trying to represent the reality into a virtual world or into GIS. So what if, or what are other ways to represent the reality other than GIS and including GIS? So in geography, or even in general, there are three major ways to represent the reality. So the first one is analog maps. In analog map, they are just paper-based maps. Okay, even you can draw a paper-based map. And তোমরা কি তোমাদের ইয়াতে পোস্ট করেছো? আমি এই জিনিসটা চেক করি নাই। আমি তোমাদেরকে একটা মেন্টাল ম্যাপ পোস্ট করতে বলেছিলাম।
Sir, I posted mine.
Okay. Let me quickly go to it. Class notebook. So কয়েকজন তোমরা কয়েকজন বলতে হ্যাঁ রাইট আমি বরঞ্চ আমার স্ক্রিনটা শেয়ার করি ইনস্টেড অফ শেয়ারিং দ্য স্লাইড তাহলে তোমরা দেখতে পাবে So Teams, yes, and then going to Teams, class notebook. Collaboration space. So do you see the maps that we have in front of us? Let me make it larger. এখানে আমাদের একটা ম্যাপ আছে, রাইট? And then এখানে আরেকটা ম্যাপ আছে। So এই দুটো ম্যাপের থেকে and they are quite same, almost same. পরে কে দিয়েছে? পরে কি রোল 11 অ্যাড করেছো?
জি স্যার।
আচ্ছা সিলভিয়া, তুমি এটা করার সময় কি কোনোভাবে সাদমানের ম্যাপটা দেখেছিলে নাকি না দেখেই এভাবে করেছো?
না স্যার, আপনি যেদিন বলেছিলেন ওদিনই আমি করেছি, তারপরে সাদমানেরটা আমি দেখিনি।
আচ্ছা ওকে, কেন জিজ্ঞেস করলাম যেহেতু দুজনের ম্যাপটাই কোয়াইট সেম, সো দেয়ার কুড বি আ পসিবিলিটি দ্যাট তুমি হয়তো কোনোভাবে এটা দেখেছো এন্ড দেন দ্যাট ম্যাপ কুড হ্যাভ ইনফ্লুয়েন্স অন ইওর ম্যাপ, সেজন্য জিজ্ঞেস করলাম। নট দ্যাট তুমি কপি করেছো অর সামথিং, আই এম নট অ্যাকিউজিং অফ এনিথিং। ওকে, সো
স্যার
এই
আমি
দুটো ম্যাপ
গুগল ম্যাপের হেল্প নিয়ে দেন করেছি।
সরি
স্যার গুগল ম্যাপের থেকে হেল্প নিয়ে দেন করেছি।
ওকে অলরাইট। সো আমি তোমাদেরকে আসলে যে কাজটা করতে বলেছিলাম সেটা হচ্ছে উইদাউট টেকিং এনি হেল্প ফ্রম এনি সোর্স। তো তুমি যখন ওভাবে করবা তখন তোমার মাথার ভিতরে যেটা আছে সেটাই তুমি দেখতে পাবে। ওকে, সেটাই এখানে মানে কি বলবো, সেটা এখানে ফুটে উঠবে আর কি। সো এনিওয়ে তোমরা অনেক ডিটেইলে ম্যাপ ড্র করেছো। I was rather hoping to see something like this, not so detailed work and color like this, or not so detailed or something like this map. আমি রাদার যে জিনিসটা এক্সপেক্ট করেছিলাম সেটা হচ্ছে জাস্ট তোমরা কয়েকটা লাইন ড্র করলা, এরকম একটা লাইন এন্ড সো অন। ওকে, এরকম মানে তোমরা আমার এক্সপেকটেশনের চাইতেও বেশি করে ফেলেছো। দ্যাট ইজ গুড, নট ব্যাড। So যাই হোক,
Sir, actually, sir, my scales are quite different because I didn't take help from Google Map, and interestingly, I have maybe 3 or 4 extra routes inside the map rather than others.
Right. So anyway, I was hoping to see more maps so that I could point out the differences between different mental maps. এই ম্যাপগুলো তো মেন্টাল ম্যাপ, তাই না? আমরা আমাদের মনের ভিতরে যেই ম্যাপটা দেখতে পাচ্ছি, আমি যে বিউপি থেকে সরি 12 নাম্বার থেকে বিউপি যাব, যে রাস্তা আমার চোখের সামনে ভেসে উঠছে, আমি তো সেটাই ড্র করব। এবং ওই যেদিনই আমি ওদিক দিয়ে রাস্তা দিয়ে গিয়েছি, আমি আমার চোখের সামনে যেগুলো আমার চোখে পড়েছে, মনে একটা ইমপ্রেশন তৈরি করেছে, those will be my landmarks in that map. Okay, so আমি এই ধরনের আরো কিছু ম্যাপ চাচ্ছিলাম। So in that case আমি ডিফারেন্স গুলো পয়েন্ট আউট করিয়ে দিতে পারতাম যে look, from this map 1 map 3 is way more different or completely different. Okay, from the representation, from the landmarks. যেমন তোমরা সবাই এখানে দেখো, তোমরা এই পুকুরগুলো দিয়েছো। সো একজন হয়তো এই পুকুরটাকে সে খেয়ালই করে না, সে এখানে পুকুর না দিয়ে বিল্ডিং গুলো দিয়েছে। So that means that person is having more focus on the buildings than these water bodies. তার কাছে ওয়াটার বডিজটা সেভাবে ইমপ্রেশন তৈরি করছে না। ওকে, তারপরে yeah, just like that. Okay, so ওই জিনিসটা আমি দেখাতে চাচ্ছিলাম। এনিওয়ে, বাকি যারা আছো তারা যদি কোনো ম্যাপ তৈরি করে থাকো, প্লিজ ডু শেয়ার, তাহলে আমরা পরবর্তী ক্লাসগুলোতে আমরা সেগুলোকে ডিসকাস করতে পারবো। তারপরে ওয়েস অফ রিপ্রেজেন্টেশন in the representing the real world. So for the first thing is analog map. The map that you have sent, they are analog map. You have uploaded them in a digital platform. You have uploaded them by taking a photo of that map. Okay, so that is digital, no doubt. If you zoom into it, it got pixels. If you zoom further in, then you will see that these these lines, they are breaking up and then they are forming some pixels. They are having blocks and blocks and blocks. So it's obviously that is digital, but the map itself is not digital. That map is analog. That it's a digital photo of an analog map. All right, because you cannot zoom into that map. You can zoom into the photo, but you cannot zoom into the map, just the way you can zoom in Google Maps. So that leads us to the next genre of maps, and that one is digital map. So in digital maps, they have maps stored at multiple scales. And what do I mean by that? It means that, for example, this is wall map. Okay, so the wall looks like this, for example, and then you are looking, let's say, from 1 kilometer or 11 kilometer from above. Okay, your altitude is 11 kilometer. You are looking down, and then you see this map. So now you are zooming in. তোমরা যদি গুগল আর্থে যাও, তাহলে কিন্তু ওখানে এলিভেশন দেখায়, খেয়াল করেছো? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So now you are zooming in and you come to 1 kilometer, and from 1 kilometer above, in the same area, you are seeing some, sorry, not like that. Let me erase this, and let me, now you are seeing some area which are going like this. Okay, অর্থাৎ এটাকে জুম করে আমি একটু দেখলাম। Now you become, let's say, 20 meters, and in 20 meters this map is becoming just land. অর্থাৎ তুমি ধরো তখন জুম করে এই অংশে চলে আসলাম। হ্যাঁ, এই অংশে তুমি জুম করলে যখন তুমি 20 মিটারসে চলে আসছো। So what is happening? Look, in the background in digital map, they have one database, and in that database they have one map of entire world. Okay, and then they break down these maps into multiple small parts. Let's say they have broken down this one into 4 parts, and they have 4 separate maps containing much detail of this region, and this region, this region, and this region. That means in this map, অর্থাৎ সোজা কথায়, they are just like paper maps. They have multiple paper maps. Okay, stack into one onto another. They have multiple this sort of maps. So if you zoom in, that means if you turn over the pages of this map book, then ধরো first যখন তুমি 11 কিলোমিটারে দেখছো, so you're seeing the first page of that map book. So now you are zooming in. That means you are turning over this page. You are going to next page, and the next page contains the area of this map. Okay, the map of this area. So that means at that point on your screen you are seeing only this area. So digitally what it does is when you are zooming in, it actually turn over this page, it accesses the next data from the database, and now you are seeing this map. Now you are zooming in further, and this map is again broken down into multiple tiles, let's say 4 tiles. And then when you are zooming in, you come to, let's say 20 meters. Now you are seeing this region. So that is this one. Okay, so it's sort of like a book. You are turning in the next page. From this page, you are turning on to the next page, and you are seeing more detailed map of a certain region that is on a different page, next page. অর্থাৎ অ্যাটলাসে যখন আমরা কোনো ম্যাপ দেখি, অ্যাটলাস হচ্ছে ম্যাপ বুক, যেটা দেখে থাকো, তো প্রথমে হয়তো তুমি ওয়ার্ল্ডের ম্যাপ দেখলাম, নেক্সট আরেকটা পেজ উল্টালা দেখবা বাংলা ইন্ডিয়ান সাবকন্টিনেন্টের ম্যাপ বা এশিয়ার ম্যাপ, next আরেকটা পেজ উল্টালা, then you come to Indian subcontinent, then you turn over the page of that atlas, then you come to Bangladesh, then you turn over another page, then you come to Dhaka, then you turn over another page, you come to Dhaka City Corporation, then you turn over Dhaka North City Corporation, you turn over Mirpur, you turn over BUP. Okay, আমার পয়েন্টটা কি বুঝতে পারলা? So ডিজিটাল ম্যাপে যেটা হয় সেক্ষেত্রে তাহলে they contain multiple maps. So if this is the lower tier, it contains these multiple maps. Okay, so next এটা হচ্ছে নিচে, এভাবে যদি আমি টায়ার গুলো হিসাব করি, this is the lowest, and then আপে দেখা যাচ্ছে এটা আরেকটু ভাগ করে দেওয়া আছে, so larger areas. Okay, এখান থেকে আরো আপে গেলা তখন it's a single map. So তুমি কোত্থেকে কোন জুমের স্কেল থেকে তুমি দেখছো, that matters on which data is database is actually accessing. So let me fire up Google Earth. I do not have Google Earth. No, it's Google. In Google.
Sir, I would like to share something.
Yes.
Sir, when we were actually having our semester break in June. Yes, in June. So one of my friends wanted to know about maps from me. So he talked about. We actually talked about. He's from IR actually. So he talked about maps, and we talked about the size of every country. So we did some research, and what we figured out is the map is not accurate actually, and what you are talking about is that they have different data sets. Yes, actually they do have. There are different layers of map in each and every zoom level, and if you consider this particular globe or this thing, this is not the actual map. The art doesn't actually look like this, because we have this distortion value, because it's in a shape of sphere. We cannot actually measure the actual land area by seeing it.
We cannot we cannot put it in a two-dimensional space, right?
Yes,
that is the point.
Yes, and not only that, there is one map which is almost accurate. And this is called the orthograph map. It was made by a Japanese geographer. So this was one of the accurate maps available, and not only that, in those particular GIS and others like this map, particularly Google, actually those things are also integrated as programs inside there. So we can get a proper scale when we zoom in, and it's also calibrated. So yeah, it's quite interesting actually if you learn about more about maps.
You could share the link with us if you can, okay, in Microsoft Teams, so that all of us can have a quick look into that website, into the autograph maps, to find out the actual sizes and shapes of the countries. And that is a very good point. And these are the points that we will be looking into in this course. That why do they look different, and how are they going to pose any problem for us? Okay, when we are studying, because you see, in Bangladesh, people die for an inch of land, don't they? So they fight with each other. They have multiple cases going on for an inch of land. Multiple countries. I mean, India and China is right now almost at the verge of the war, of a war. Okay, just because of these lands and other geopolitics. So land is very important for us, for humankind. And when we talk about land, we have to find out the boundary with possible accuracy and possible precision, right? And when you do that, GIS comes in. As I said earlier, in land management, GIS comes in. GIS plays an important role, very important role, okay? And that's why you have to understand how these boundaries could change just because of these projections. Like you project any sphere onto a plane surface, onto a two-dimensional diagram, just like Sadman said, that the Earth is three-dimensional, and on our computer screen is two-dimensional. It only has height and width, or length and width. So these three-dimensional shapes or sizes or locations are sometimes very difficult to represent on this two-dimensional space. So we will try to find out the answers to all these problems throughout this course. Anyway, let's come back to the class. And this is Google Earth. That's our country, we know. And in here, you will see the altitude of your eye. That means you are looking from 6,835.90 mile above from the sea level. Okay, and the image that you got is from Landsat here and Copernicus. So Copernicus, they sent Sentinel, and then I think they also sent Meteosat, so meteorological satellites, a series of meteorological satellites, Meteosats. Let's zoom in, okay, and see what happens. We zoomed in, right? So now multiple features are popping up, multiple boundaries are popping up, and they were invincible when we were looking up from 6,000 mile. Nothing here, because those layers, they exist in the database, but they exist beyond our zoom level. তার মানে যে সাদমান যেরকম বললো যে এক একটা লেয়ার থাকে এক একটা জুমের ক্ষেত্রে, হ্যাঁ, ঠিক সেইভাবে ওই লেয়ারটা দেওয়া আছে আমাদের। এটা যদি আমরা অ্যাটলাস বুক মনে করি, সেটা হচ্ছে নেক্সট পেজে আছে, ওই পেজে আমরা এখনো যাইনি। So when you zoom in, you see now multiple boundaries came up, and then also state boundaries. We can see the state boundaries, we can identify them in yellow color, they are showing up as well. Let's zoom in further. Our altitude is 2,000 miles. Let's make it to 1,000 mile. See what happens. Okay, now you can identify Dhaka. Okay,
so
you can identify. My screen is not being shared.
Like it's still showing 6,835 miles.
Okay. Give me a moment then. Let me stop sharing and reshare. এখন কি দেখা যাচ্ছে?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me go back to 2000 mile. The 2000 mile looks like this. Okay, we have Dhaka. We can see more areas. All right, we have some boundaries. Let's zoom in. Still, we are focusing on Landsat. We are getting data from Landsat and Copernicus. Okay, so that's almost 1000. Let's zoom in further. Let's zoom into 300, possibly. Okay, so close to 300. Now we have the shapes of water bodies, the possible shapes or outlines of water bodies visible. Okay, and the roads or highways, they are now identified using different numbers, N1, N8, N7, and so on. Okay, so still we are relying on Landsat satellite and Copernicus satellites. Let's zoom in further. Let's go to 100 mile. In 100 mile, now you see the multiple lines, the river lines are even more visible to us, and more numbers are coming up to the road networks, and further connecting roads or highways are even visible. So these layers, they were hidden at some zoom level. So when we're zooming in, we are actually, if you think of a book, then we are turning up the pages, and then we're seeing the more detailed picture of certain location. But in analog map or in book, it's limited within what inside the book. But in digital maps, it's not limited like a book. For example, in a book, if the book is based on Bangladesh, then the more pages you turn, turn over, then you are focusing on maybe in Dhaka, because it is specifically made for Dhaka. So from global, you become to continental, then you become to regional, then you become to national, then you become again regional within the national. Okay, and then a regional থেকে তুমি এখন specifically তুমি এখন ঢাকায় চলে আসলা. It cannot show you what's going on in Thimphu of Bhutan, right? It cannot show you what's going on in Netherlands. But in digital map, since it's digitally stored, you can access any part of the world if the data is there. So that's the benefit of digital maps. And then if you now further zoom in, let's see what happens. You see now the more detailed road networks are visible. And now if you look into image, it's not showing Landsat or Copernicus anymore. It's only showing Maxar technologies. So the data that Google is pulling now, they are from Maxar. So Maxar is a company, a satellite company, which gives you satellite data. Let's zoom out a little bit. Landsat Copernicus, yep, you see, it's 18 mile. And if I zoom out at 23 mile altitude, it shows the data. Oh, sorry, yep, oops. At 27 altitude, it shows the data are being pulled from, not 27, maybe 30. At 30 mile altitude, it says that data are being pulled from Landsat. But then if we zoom further in, once we cross these 30 meters or 30 miles, the data are being pulled from Maxar technologies. Why? Because Maxar technology gives you higher resolution images. Okay, so higher resolution means more detailed images. We will discuss them, the resolution and other things. Don't worry. Just for now, it's just related to the standard definition and high definition and ultra high definition televisions. Okay, ultra high definitions, you have very clear image. You even sometimes it's possible to see every single hair in UHD. And then in high definitions, it's possible to identify small spots, and then in SD it's sort of blurred out. So Landsat is becoming SD in this sense, and the Maxar is becoming high definition. So we're zooming in, and then if we zoom in further, then now we can even identify the buildings. Okay, and you see the things are being loaded, and if I quickly pan this one, you see, it's accessing the next images, next line of images. So it's taking some time. And if I pan it, then you will find that it's blurred out. It's not really showing anything. You see, it's blurred out. Blurry. Then now they are loading. Why? Because it's accessing the database, and now it's pulling up, or it's pulling in multiple sets of data. Before that, when we were looking into Landsat data, it was pulling only one single scene or two scenes to fill out the display. But then when we're zooming in further, now it's pulling in multiple scenes to fill out this display. Okay, and that's why it's taking longer than previous time to load all this data. So this is quite interesting. And I can also show you some other interesting part. For example, I can show you, let's go to Google Map. And in Google Map, you see these lines. Even if you cannot see, I would suggest you to go to Google Map and then try to zoom in and zoom out very quickly. And when you do that, you will find this block of grids, okay, all over the map. And these block of grids are the grids which contains multiple data. তোমাদের ইন্ডিকে আমাদের আমি যেটা দেখতে পাচ্ছি, এটা দেখতে পাচ্ছো? I mean যে ব্লক যেটা তৈরি হয় যখন আমি জুম করি।
জি স্যার, দেখা যাচ্ছে।
জি স্যার।
So these blocks, if you zoom in further, these blocks are visible. Okay, so এটা তো পাহাড়. Let me zoom into something more interesting about our country. So এখানে আমি যখন জুম ইন করছি, এই যে ব্লকগুলো দেখা যাচ্ছে, and these blocks are creating the data. এবং যখন আমি একদম মায়ের দোয়া 100 পে যাচ্ছি, so this is the last that it can go. So আমি যদি ওই জুম লেভেলের একদম নিচের দিকে যাই, তখন it contains the data or the image of this region. Okay, and these regions are connected with each other. These maps are এমন ভাবে বিছানো, তোমার কাছে মাল্টিপল কাগজ আছে, তুমি কাগজ ফ্লোরের মধ্যে এমন ভাবে বিছালা তাদের ভিতরে কোনো গ্যাপ নাই. So these photos or these images, they are just like that. They are organized in such way that they do not leave any gaps. So since they do not have any gaps, how much you pan, it doesn't really matter, or how many times you pan, it doesn't really matter. You will see a continuous map. But whenever you are zooming out, you will feel that, okay, so these are the blocks. These are the blocks. They are getting, displayed. So তোমার যদি স্লো ইন্টারনেট হয়, সেক্ষেত্রে তুমি আরো এটা ক্লিয়ারলি দেখতে পাবা যে একটা ব্লক করে ম্যাপগুলো লোড হচ্ছে। কেন হচ্ছে? Why? Because it's pulling one image in which covers one single block, then it's started pulling the next image in which covers the next block. So that's how digital maps are stored. Okay, so whenever these digital maps are being stored, so you see, I didn't talk about anything of any data. All I said was they have maps and they are storing maps. So the difference between a traditional database and a database that is being used in digital maps is that it identifies some location and then it contains some cartographic information. Okay, so what is the difference between analog maps and digital maps? Analog maps, they are static. You cannot change them. You cannot zoom them. You cannot pan them. Okay, you cannot have a overall photo with overall picture with details in a single platform. On the other hand, in digital maps, they are dynamic compared to analog maps. You can zoom, pan, and select the maps. However, you cannot do any analysis in these maps because they have only cartographic database. Along with the traditional database, they have cartographic database, which contains the information of mapping. That's it. You cannot do any analysis in them. All right. So that is the difference between analog map and digital map. And GIS map, we'll come back to that in a bit. So analog map, it's been here for centuries, and not just on paper, because sometimes people have drawn their maps on stones, on woods, or sometimes even on skin. So if you have seen the film Sirajuddaula, I think that is the name, Banglar Shesh Nawab, Sirajuddaula. Okay, and if you have seen that scene where they were planning the the battle of Amrokanon, right? Amrokanonei to হচ্ছে সূর্য বাংলার সূর্য অস্ত গেল, তাই না? So if you have looked into that map is actually made of clay or made of wood in the film. Okay, so at that time maybe they didn't have paper, they didn't have any paper map, so they tried to model down, they tried to represent the reality using some clays or some sort, and they devised their plan of the battle. A similar way, if you have seen the TV show, what is the name, Lord of the Rings, that film, or the TV show of I just forgot the name of the TV show where there are dragons and Kali, what was the name? Khaleesi or something. Game of Thrones, exactly. Right. So if you have seen Game of Thrones, you have seen the maps were drawn on a floor, sometimes on a parchment, sometimes on skins. Okay. So there are multiple medias of maps. So they are usually divided into physical map sheets. For example, here you will find that this is Western Australia, and you will find that this paper map is drawn over multiple pieces. Okay, so every piece has their own numbers, just like digital maps. So this is a block, and this contains the region of this area, the map of this area. And then if you look into this number 2030, and this one contains the map of this region. And then when you put all these papers together, then you have one entire map of Western Australia, something like that. So it only emphasizes on visual communication, that where the things are, the approximate location, sometimes very accurate location as well. And when do we use the very accurate location? For example, war. If you have seen the latest film, Greyhound, starred by Tom Hanks, you will see how the navies were fighting in seas or in oceans. And when they are fighting, they are trying to find out their locations, and they are also trying to find out their enemies' locations. Okay, and they are trying to find out by doing some measurements on these sort of paper maps. So in this case, these paper maps are very accurate, and they are trying to find out the accurate and precise locations of this of the enemies. But sometimes it's hard because it's paper maps. You cannot zoom in and find out more detailed information. So there are two types of paper maps. One is reference maps, and another one is thematic maps. So in reference maps, these are usually political maps. I think, yeah, these are usually political maps. They draw the political boundaries or some other boundaries. For example, we have South City Corporation map, and this one is a political map. And this one is also a reference map. Why? Because it draws the boundaries of different zones, the boundaries of wards, okay, and the boundaries of Dhaka City, DSCC, Dhaka South City Corporation. All right. So whenever we talk about these reference maps, they are again divided into, they also include roads, or they could include roads, rivers, and other natural phenomena or entities. These maps, they are again divided into two categories. One is topographic map, another one is atlas map. So topographic map usually depends on the landforms. Okay, and the atlas maps is the political boundaries, concerned with political boundaries. The thematic map, however, it has a special purpose or a single topic in mind. For example, you want to find out some particular geographic distribution, or you want to find out, for example, population density, right? So if you want to find out population density, and if you print a map of population density, then that one is a thematic map. So from the word, it contains the type of the map, or from the word, you can understand what type of map it is, because it's a thematic map. So if you break down thematic, it's based on themes. So these maps has some themes. And what is this theme? Could be anything. Could be population density. Could be production. Could be land cover. Could be built-up area. Anything. Okay, or it could be just water bodies, or it could be flooded area. So in that map, you are showing only the flood damage or flood damage. All right, flood damaged map. So in that map, you are showing where the flood damages happened. Is it 0%? Is it 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, and so on? So these thematic maps, sometimes they could be quantitative or qualitative. So when it's quantitative, it usually denotes some numbers, and there are numbers involved. For example, temperature map or rainfall data. Okay, rainfall map. So in our example, we have rainfall map, and from this map, easily we can understand where it rained 50 millimeter, where it rains more than 3,000 millimeters, and also it draws the boundary of the rainfall. Okay. So it says that it's so these lines, these boundary lines, they are known as isoheights. And if it's a temperature map, it will be known as isotherm. Okay. So these are quantitative maps, as well as sometimes you will find qualitative maps as thematic maps. So, for example, you want to find out the geology of Bangladesh. So what are the soil types of Bangladesh, for example, or the mineral types that are found in our country, or the vegetation types? If you think of vegetation types, then, or forest types, what are the forest types exist or can be found in our country? So in that maps, if we think about forest, you will find that, okay, so this region, there are the shal forest, and this is the mixed forest maybe, or reserve forest, then mangrove forest, and rest of the area have homestead forest if there is, and if not, then it's empty. It may be colored in gray, or maybe colored in ash color, to represent that there is nothing, there is no forest. It could be anything. It could be water bodies. It could be built up areas. It could be bare land, anything. For example, if you look into this map doesn't really give you where the rivers are, does it? It's not. There is no line for the rivers. Okay, there is nothing. On the other hand, if we go back to DNCC, then you will find that the water bodies are shown, because this one is reference map. Okay, but this map, in these two maps, we are not concerned about water bodies, or we are not concerned about road networks. We're not interested or invested in those things. Rather, we are invested in rainfall. We're interested in knowing where are my certain geology is found in certain region. Okay, where are, let's say, what is it band, or where are the Madhupur clay? So I go to the map and say, okay, so this is the region where the Madhupur clay is found, right? So in these maps, they are shown in polygons by using polygons. So this one is a polygon. So what's a polygon? So polygon is an enclosed boundary. So in GIS, there are three types of vector entities. One is point, then line, and then polygon. If it's a polygon, then it's enclosed. Or আমরা এটাকে বাংলায় কি বলি? I mean, what happened is আমি GIS নিয়ে কাজ করতে করতে আমার এই এনক্লোজড বাউন্ডারি আসলে আমি সেগুলোকে পলিগন বলা শুরু করি। এন্ড দ্য ফার্স্ট টাইম যখন আমি GIS ক্লাসে গিয়েছিলাম তখন এটাকে আমার পলিগন বলাটা আমি ভুলে যেতাম। ওকে, কারণ তখন এটাকে আমি অন্য নামে চিনতাম, বাট এখন এমন হয়েছে আমি অন্য নামটাই কমপ্লিটলি ভুলে গিয়েছি। সো হোয়াট এভার দ্যাট ইজ, তোমরা যে নামে সেটাকে জানো না কেন, মনে রাখবা এটা যদি বাউন্ডারি হয়, এনক্লোজড বাউন্ডারি যদি হয়, সেটা যেই ফর্মে হোক না কেন, this is polygon, and this is polyline. It's not only line, we say polyline in GIS, okay? And this is point. So everything starts with P, point, polyline, polygon. So
Sir,
in these maps, yes?
Sir, পলিগন কি তাহলে আমাদের অ্যাটলাসের মতো? অ্যাটলাস ম্যাপ যেটা আমাদের পলিটিক্যাল বাউন্ডারি দেখায়, সেটাও কি আমাদের পলিগনের আন্ডারেই পড়বে?
Yes, so অ্যাটলাসের ক্ষেত্রেও সেটা পলিগন হবে। যেমন ধরো বাংলাদেশের বাউন্ডারি যখন দেখাচ্ছে তখন ইটস মানে শুধু বাউন্ডারির কথাটা বলছি, ভিতরের কথা বলছি না। সো ইটস এনক্লোজড এন্টিটি, রাইট? সো দ্যাট ইজ পলিগন। ফর এক্সাম্পল হিয়ার, ওকে, আমি তো বরঞ্চ রেফারেন্স ম্যাপে যাই। সো এখানেও দেখো এই পুরোটা হচ্ছে কি স্টাডি এরিয়ার বাউন্ডারি, রাইট? সো এই স্টাডি এরিয়ার বাউন্ডারি একটা পলিগন, ওকে। এন্ড দেন এখানে আমার জোন 3 আছে এই কালারটা দিয়ে, এখানে একটা বাউন্ডারি আছে। সো দিস ইজ অ্যানাদার পলিগন। জোন 1 অ্যানাদার পলিগন। দেন রিভার বডিজ, সো রিভার গুলোকে আবার এভাবে বাউন্ডারি করে দেখানো হয়েছে, সিঙ্গেল লাইন করে দেখানো হয়নি। সো দিস আর পলিগনস, ওকে। এখানে রিভার বডি আছে, দিস ইজ পলিগন। এটা হচ্ছে ধানমন্ডি লেক। সো এটা হচ্ছে একটা এনক্লোজ বাউন্ডারি, এটাকে পলিগন হিসেবে দেখানো হয়েছে। এখন আমি যদি এখন ওয়ার্ডে যাই, ধরো এটা ওয়ার্ড নাম্বার হচ্ছে কথা 77। সো এই ওয়ার্ড, এটা যদি ওয়ার্ড হয়, সো দিস ইজ দ্য বাউন্ডারি অফ দিস ওয়ার্ড, সো দিস ইজ আ পলিগন। বাট এক্সকিউজ মি, বাট যখন আমি রোড নেটওয়ার্কের কথা বলছি, সো দিস আর পলিলাইন্স। And whenever I am saying that, okay, so these are the location of different thanas. Okay, so these thanas are represented using points. You see these black dots? বুঝতে পেরেছো? Anyway, these multiple regions are displayed by the polygons, and within these polygons areas are assumed to be homogeneous. That means if we are talking about Madhupur clay, throughout this region we're assuming that we can find only Madhupur clay. We cannot find marsh clay pit or early quaternary bedrock or bent clay or alluvial fan deposits. Nothing is found here, only Madhupur clay. Okay, so in the similar way, when we have this boundary, we only assume that the rainfall here is from 100 to 200 millimeters. Okay, nothing less, nothing more than that. That means throughout this region, এই রিজিয়নটা যদি আমরা বলি তাহলে March 2002 till 28 February 2003, the yearly rainfall or average yearly rainfall was counted as 200 millimeters, 100 to 200 millimeters. এই রিজিয়নে এখন এই রিজিয়নের পয়েন্টের ভিতরে, if there are some large area which had some anomaly, for example this one inside had rainfall over 200 millimeters, then we are identifying it with another polygon which is located inside another polygon, or this polygon you could say. So in this region it rained 200 to 300 millimeters, and whenever we say that, we assume that this region is also homogeneous. So all the rainfalls that fall upon or inside this boundary or in this boundary, they are ranged from 200 to 300 millimeters. So it's homogeneous, it's not heterogeneous. Okay, nothing of the track are inside, or no anomaly is found in this area. So when we come to digital maps, so that wraps up the analog maps. So analog maps, two types of maps: reference maps thematic maps. Okay, and the reference maps, it got divided into two categories: topographic map, atlas maps. Atlas maps deals with political boundaries. Topographic maps deals with natural phenomena. Okay, how the land is formed. These are topographic maps. And then when we come to thematic maps, we have two types of thematic maps. One is qualitative, another one is quantitative. So quantitative deals with numbers. If there is anything of number, it's quantitative. If there is some quality information, that means there is no number. Rather, there are some names of the classes, then we say qualitative thematic map. For example, this one, there is no value, there is no number. So in digital maps, as I was saying, the difference between digital map and analog map is that analog map doesn't have any database. So digital maps, since it's digital, it has databases. Along with the traditional databases, it has one more specific component, and that one is called cartographic database. That cartographic database contains the locational information and the cartographic information of the maps. Okay, and what do I mean by that? For example, I want to find out Delhi. So I type Delhi here, I click, and then it finds out the location of Delhi. It matches the name with Delhi, and it actually pan and zoom my display to Delhi. It instantly do not show me Delhi, although you are saying that it's happening instantly, but then it's panning it to the here. And then we can find out from Delhi, sorry. Right, directions. So from Delhi, I want to, or from Dhaka, I want to go to Delhi. So it finds out the road that is connecting, or the series of roads, or the combination of roads. Those are connecting Dhaka and Delhi. So it shows me all this information, as well as it's also containing the information of how long it might take me to drive there, and if there is any construction going on. So these are the latest, addition to Google Maps or in digital maps. So this information, how long does it take to drive, and if there is any construction going on, and what if I take this route, and if there is any road blockade or closed or something. So all this information, they are stored in traditional database. On the other hand, the road networks, the name of the roads, because if you zoom in, it actually tells you which road that you have to take and where do you have to turn. Okay, you see the pass by Riyaz on the right. So all these informations, the turning, the cornering, the roads, the connecting roads, the other things, these are stored in a cartographic database because they are location dependent and so on. So, however, still it emphasizes on the visual communication. Okay, now we can find out the directions, but still, just like paper maps, most of the time, what do we want to know? Just want to find out where the things are from here, like where the Delhi is and where the Dhaka is, and then in Dhaka, where are the Keranganj, and so on. Yeah, so culmination of satellite imagery as well as street level information. So it also takes in the satellite imagery and the street level information. So the road that from Dhaka to Delhi can be found from the road information, the street information. At the same time, I can turn on the satellite image to find out actually how the neighborhood look like that I'm interested in. And in the latest edition, what I can do is we can actually see how do they look like. So I can drop this little guy and then I can look around. Okay, so this image was taken in to September 2009. Okay, and then I can see how does it look like. Okay, so it's an intersection, there is a plane. So whenever in future I will be driving, if I see this plane, I know that, okay, so I'm at this point. However, the Google Maps, it's copyrighted, right? So although it's free, you cannot change it. It's not open source. But there are other platforms involved with OSM where you can find out, where you can make contribution. You can contribute and you can actually say that, yes, these are the latest photos. I mean, you can use the citizen science to, update the data. তোমরা কি এই প্ল্যাটফর্মের নাম জানো? আমি ঠিক ভুলে গিয়েছি এই প্ল্যাটফর্মের নামটা কি। Where you can take photos of street and upload it, just like OSM. You can upload the photo and then it will be in the database, and other users can access this, the street view of that locality. So paper maps, updating paper maps or analog maps is not that frequent. Sometimes it's not that accurate as well. You will find that one map was adopted, the paper map was adopted some years ago, maybe 5 years ago. That map is still being circulated after 5 years. On the other hand, in digital maps, the update is quite frequent and new features are being added in frequently, and also the accuracy is quite higher than paper maps. And yeah, so GIS map is a little different than this prior to. How? Because along with traditional database, along with cartographic database, it has geographic database built in, and geographic database would contain more information than that is geographic information than a cartographic database can. So that means it can do much more than any digital map. Okay, for example, in our digital map, in Google Map, what we can do is we can find out the direction from Dhaka to Delhi, which way should I take, and so on. Okay, but it cannot really tell you how many hospitals are within 10 kilometers from your location. Okay, something like that. Or can it? I don't know. Let's try. Let's put Delhi nearby. Or let's put Dhaka. And then let's find out nearby. Yep, so it doesn't really tell you how many hospitals are near you, or I can actually try hospitals nearby. Yeah, so it shows you hospitals nearby, but it doesn't really narrow them down and tell you that how many hospitals are within 10 kilometers. Okay, so maybe you are only interested in the hospitals that are located within 1 kilometer from your house because it's an emergency. So it doesn't really tell you how many hospitals are within 1 kilometer from your location. But having a geographic database, you can do that. So that's why geographic GIS maps can do much more than two prior maps. Okay, so it emphasizes on structure and management of data and their relationships. So why are we able to say that, okay, how many hospitals are located within 10 kilometers from my location or within 1 kilometer of my location and so on? Yes, because it can tell you, because it can calculate the distances between these multiple entities altogether, and then it can present you the result. In a simple term, it can buffer 1 kilometer distance from your house, and then buffer মানে হচ্ছে ওই যে বড় করে একটা বৃত্ত আঁকা. Okay, so it can buffer and then it can identify the hospitals within this buffer. Okay, it can intersect these two layers. One is buffer layer, another one is hospital layer, and then only the intersected hospitals can be put or can be presented in the result. And the main focus of GIS maps are analysis. So these two previous maps, they try to focus on visual communication. They try to make us understand where the things are. In GIS, it doesn't really, the primary focus is not to make you understand or make the users understand of the locations, rather focus on the analysis. How can we make some decisions? How these, how some problems can be solved, what could be the results, and how can we make policies. So these are our focus in GIS maps. And in the paper maps, the data source could be anything. For example, you have drawn a paper map. Sylvia and Sadman, they have drawn 2 paper maps showing us. So Sadman's map doesn't really show us how to reach to BUP from, I mean, which route should we take to reach to BUP from Mirpur 12. It shows just in general that, okay, so these are the existing roads that we have, okay, or the roads or routes that he knows, all right? Because from his map, we can go to BUP only through DOHS or only through or in front of NTC, but you can also reach to BUP through Alubdi. Maybe you two didn't, you two never went to BUP through Alubdi. That's why you do not know that route, or that area is not quite well known to you. That's why you omitted including that that area or that route. Okay. However, on the other hand, in Sylvia's map, Sylvia actually have drawn the preferred route from Mirpur 12 to BUP. So you see, both of these maps, if I give these maps to my friends, they can reach to BUP from Mirpur 12. Okay, so this is also a source. So you have drawn a paper map and you became the source as author. So now I'm accessing your paper map. So your map, use your hand-drawn map, you upload it to the OneNote or class notebook, and now I'm downloading it and distributing to my friends and families so that they can come and see my workplace. So now I'm using the secondary sources of paper maps or analog maps. Okay, so I said analog maps and paper is in parentheses because the analog should be the more appropriate term for this, because sometimes these paper maps, they can be in digital form as well, not on a piece of paper. Okay, before computer existed, they were piece of paper, they were on piece of papers, but now they could be in both digital format or in paper format. So it's always better to identify them as analog maps. So there are multiple sources of these paper maps, these analog maps. They could be accurate, or they could be not really that accurate. Like the 2 maps you have drawn, that map doesn't really maintain any scale, doesn't really maintain any sizes of the landmarks that you have put. So that one is just to understand, just to give a sense of the locality. Okay, so that one is not really accurate, not really that precise. But then if we have bought an atlas map from any company, then or a map book, in that case, those maps would be more accurate than your map. Okay, so there are multiple sources, and sometimes to draw this accurate map, sometimes different agencies or organizations or companies, they do some sort of surveys. They go to the field and with these triangular machines and other things or handheld GPS, they draw the survey and then they create these maps and so on. On the other hand, in digital maps, we already have the things, or we already have our data in digital form, or in these days, data are collected in digital form. So what do is we store everything on database, and then we update and change everything. So there are also data sources. There are normally there are one data sources, and that is primary, because every company, every agencies, they are collecting their own data. For example, Google is collecting its own data. If you see a Google Street View, Google, they put camera and they put GPS on top of their car, and they just drove by and they took the photos of the street view, something like that. Sometimes this data can be secondary as well. Sometimes Google is buying data from some other source. So that's secondary method of data access. And there are also a newer form in digital maps. Newer forms of data collection, that one is citizen science. And I'm not quite really sure where does it fall into. Does it fall in the primary source category, because every user is actively collecting the data, right? So if you are the one who is collecting the data, that is primary data source. On the other hand, every user, and these users do not really work in a specific company like Google. So since you are not working in a company, can you really say, or the company that is publishing, I mean, for OSM, there is some people they are working on behind this OSM, although this is open source, and although this is based on citizen science, anyone can contribute, right? But then someone is having some positions into the organization. Someone is maintaining the databases, some company or some people or some volunteers, they are maintaining the databases. They have some names, they have some designations. And then all the users, those who are contributing, they do not have any designations rather than just being the user, having the username. So from that aspect, in the organogram, you are not part of that organization. So, but you are collecting the data. So from that perspective, this might be a secondary data source. So I'm not really sure where does it fall into, but I think it's more like a primary data source, because since you are an user of that particular platform, that means you are now being affiliated with that organization. And from that perspective or from that stance, we can say that this is primary data source. I mean, they are sourcing from primary data source. So similarly, GIS have two sources of information. So one is primary data source, and second one is the secondary data source. So you already understand what are these things. So in primary data source, you are the one who are collecting the data. And in secondary data source, we are collecting data, or we are using data which was and published by someone else. So for example, if you have GPS device and then you go outside and you measure the boundary, or you map out the road networks inside BUP, then that is primary data source. On the other hand, for example, I have created or drawn these road network maps of BUP, and then I published it online or offline, then now you are using it or accessing it. From that perspective, that is secondary data source, because you had nothing to do with it. You didn't work for it. Okay. So primary data source, it is a digital format in GIS, because most of the data they are collecting by at least handheld GPSs or the remote sensing. And these are the conventional mapping methods, because you are fully confident on your data. You know which data to include, you know which data or which entity to exclude. For example, in my road map, I may include the width of the roads. So to display the widths of the roads, I may have drawn the roads in this way. For example, in Sadman and Sylvia's map, they have drawn roads in such way, right? They say this went to GHS, this is NDC, and this is Mirpur 12. So they have drawn this way. Maybe I would have drawn the same map using this way. So this is the road from Mirpur 12, this is NDC in a more simple form. Okay, and this is a single road. And my logic is this is a road, so it's a line, right? This is the where I walk on and I move forward or go backward, or I go from one place to another. So this is a road, and all roads are normally represented in a single line or using polyline. So I have used polyline. On the other hand, what you have done is you didn't really use polyline, you have used polygon. So you said that, okay, so these are the roads, okay, or something like that. So these are the roads that you have said, right? So yeah. And for a certain time, until a certain time when the GIS data were not much available, the secondary we relied on secondary sources. but at present, most of the time we rely on the primary sources. However, since there are so many data available in these days, most of the time we are still relying on secondary sources. Not most of the time, still to some extent, we are relying on secondary sources. More specifically in Bangladesh, we are relying on secondary sources. So you may ask, how about the remote sensing data? Do they fall into primary source or secondary source? So in the conventional answer would be they fall into secondary source because some other companies are collecting this data and then they are publishing and you're accessing it. However, if you are the one who have a drone, you run the drone, collect the data, and then use the data at the time, you are obviously the primary source. So that is the class for today. Do you have any question? কারো কোনো প্রশ্ন আছে? একজন মেসেজ দিয়েছে, okay, ArcGIS is successfully installed, very good. কারো কোনো প্রশ্ন? Anyone? All right, if not, I'm closing the recording. Stop.